Welcome back, and I'm glad to see you. I'm George, and I have a question. Do you still have those challenges? How do you get copper clean? The scrubbers that you put inside the column or the column itself? Let me share this with you because it really is easy, and we want you to be successful. Well, this is a topic that we get questions about on a regular basis. And I'd just like to really clarify it and so that everybody understands, cleaning is essential, of course, in any distillation process. Now, there's a difference between cleaning and sanitation. You need to listen to that one. Sanitation is really, really critical for your fermentation process, or if you're making beer or wine, or in this case you're making sake. Things need to be sanitized because the environment is really ripe for stuff to grow. Now, and you want that to happen, but you want the stuff you want to grow. So keep that in mind. Now, cleanliness, on the other hand, is not sanitation. You got to get all the dirt and all the grime and all that other stuff off. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we're clean through our distillation equipment, not necessarily sanitized. You can sanitize it if you want to, but it's not going to give you any benefit. And if you do not sanitize distilling equipment, like the still itself, it's not going to have any adverse effects. But it must be clean. Yeah, you knew it. I was going to get the board out real quick. But I need to explain to you really what happens. If you'll have a pot, and see, now I've got a stainless steel pot right here that I use on a regular basis, so I'm going to demonstrate with that. If we were looking down in the inside of that pot, sometimes you'll see there's a grunge that'll grow, not grow, but it kind of just gets along the inside, and it's water spots. It's that hard water. Now, even if you're using a water softener and softening all your water, that you tend to develop these over a period of time. And in some cases, if you have like really hard water, it'll develop each and every time. And you got to get that off. Here's what happens if you don't. You'll have a buildup of that, and a lot of it you can't see. Most of it you can. But it'll build up on there, and then during the distillation process, pieces of that will start to break off. And guess where it goes? It's really light, so it's carried up through your still and it winds up in your jar. And then you'll look at it and you'll wonder, what are all these flakes of things? Where'd that come from? I didn't put that in there. And that's what it is. It's a lot of the calcium deposit or some other minerals that have deposited inside. Now, the other challenge we have is with copper. And we all know that copper develops a patina on the outside of it, and that's just a protective cover. Now, some of that patina over a period of time, especially in a piece of copper that turns, that has an angle in it, or because right in here is where a good large sediment will start to develop. That, or as it's coiled, a lot of condensers. Or if you have a fitting, or if you have any solder. Now what will happen is it'll start to develop a crust. In that crust, it's an interaction of all the chemicals and materials and minerals that are going through it is starting to react with the copper itself. And without getting real technical, all it does is start to develop a buildup. Sometimes it's black, sometimes it's green, sometimes it's a little bluish. But in any case, all of that stuff is really poisonous. Let's call it toxic. And you don't want that. Now, have you ever wondered, and maybe you've even had this experience, you'll run through your copper still and you get this blue greenish hue or tint to your product. Well, it's picking up all of that stuff that's in all these turns and curves, or in these turns themselves. So it's picking up pieces of that and it's displacing it right back into your spirits. So we need to get rid of all of that. It's also a good idea to just keep things clean. How do we do that? Yep, I knew the question was coming. Well, now remember, we're working with two different metals here. We're working with either stainless steel or we're working with copper. The two most prevalent metals in the United States now used for distilling equipment or fermenting equipment or cooking equipment. You know, it covers the gambit. Whenever I want to show you this, and you can see that, you see I have a buildup in here, even though our water is not really that hard. I've got some buildup, and you can see in the bottom there I've got some, you see that all the way down in there? Yeah. And before I use this, I want to make sure that all of that is gone. It's the same thing in your still. Remember, clean your still with warm soapy water. I hear all the time about, okay, do I have to do a sacrificial run? I have no idea where that term came from or where that process came from. Why would you make a run and throw it away? It's, okay. Now you can run, you know, a 50-50 water vinegar mixture through it. And that, it takes a while, but you can do that. I wouldn't run a whole run, but you know, you can run it for 20-30 minutes, and I mean that does a really good job of cleaning things out. It's not as good as other items. Hell, an old scrub brush a scrub brush will beat it every time, or a Brillo pad, but you don't want to scratch anything. So you see, now we're back to, what do we use? All right. The first thing I use on all stainless steel is CLR. You can get this at Walmart, just about anywhere. And with CLR, what's really neat about this, and you normally use it with a 50-50 mixture, 50% water, 50% CLR, calcium lime rust. I'll just take it with a cloth. I'll dampen it with some CLR, and watch this. And all I have to do is wipe the inside of it. And that CLR will lift off all of that stuff that's in there. Now all I've got to do is rinse it out with cool water. Make sure you rinse it out, because right now I've got a layer of calcium lime rust, which is a combination of chemicals laying in there. So all I got to do is rinse it out, and rinse it out with cool water, or use hot water if you have to, but just give it a good rinse. And if you're really, really feeling anxious, use a little bit of warm soapy water, rinse it out, okay? So that's the easiest way to keep your kettle or all of your fixtures and things like that clean. I mean, how do you do that if you have a stainless steel column? Well, pour a little bit in one end of it with a 50-50 water and then shake it back and forth. That CLR will clean all of the inside of that column, and you won't have any issues with that. Then, of course, spray it out. So far, so good. Yeah. That's it for the CLR. Now, there's another product, because a lot of times we have the challenges with copper. This is this is a 1.5 inch or 1.5 inch copper tube. And it's awful hard to get on the inside. Of course, you can use a brush and go through it. And the same thing with this was at one time a torpedo condenser for a reflux chamber. And how do you, if I was going to use that as a worm, which is, I could, how do you clean the inside of that? I mean, that's almost impossible unless you got a really tiny, you know, the challenges are there. And this is the stuff you'll never see, because you can't see inside it. So you got that challenge. And then you've got the scrubbers. You know how you roll those up and slide those inside your column. When you take them back out, a lot of times they look like this. Instead of their original color, which should be more shiny. That's also a used one. I've got one here. Let me roll this up, and you'll notice there's a distinct difference between these two. This one has not been used yet. This one has been used once. So how do you get that off? Well, a lot of, you know, normally once I run a still, take the column off, you remove the packing immediately and clean the packing. First, rinse it. and that'll get off any of the solids and sediments. And then you want to run it through a cleaning process. That cleaning process is really, really simple. Now, before you go any further, your selection of copper mesh. See, I got this long copper mesh. You can get these from Mile High carries it. Brew House has it. Most of your brew websites will have that. And it's pure copper. Now, that's a difference between, you go to Walmart and you got Scotch-Brite copper scrubbers. Please, don't use these. Sometimes you'll find them for $1. They seem to be really inexpensive, and they are. They seem to be right because they look like copper, but you'll notice on the front of it, somewhere on that label, it'll say coated scrubbing pads. Coated. So it's copper coated steel. And man, they flake. They'll cause you a lot of problems, and they are impossible to clean because being coated, they flake. So once the copper coating's gone, and guess where that goes? Yeah, you guessed it, right into the distillate. But once that's gone, all you've got left is a metal scrubbing pad. So please don't use those. Always default to pure copper. Now, you can use copper saddles. You can use, remember the copper pennies. You can use a 3/8 copper tube that you just start cutting sections of it off. Just use pure copper. Now, the easiest way to clean that is with a product called Tarnex. And I've shared this with many, many people over the years. This is probably about $5 for this bottle. It's a black bottle, Tarn-X, Tarnex. And it's made specifically for sterling silver, silver plate, platinum, copper, gold, and diamonds. And this will remove all of that patina, all of that buildup that are in those cracks and crevices or somewhere, anywhere in your worm or in your column. Now, how effective is this stuff? Let me show you. Now that I got this bottle open, if I take a little bit of Tarnex, and in particular, I'll take this piece of copper. Now, just remember, what I'm doing here on the outside happens on the inside. Do you see how quickly it removes all that patina? You can go all the way around that, and all of a sudden, you've got a super clean, shiny, bright piece of copper. Now, that's the stuff you clean off of the inside. And how do we accomplish that? Well, kind of like the same process. This stuff actually works on contact, so you could pour some in there and you can shake it back and forth and then rinse it out. That's one way. Now, how do we get into the center of this? I mean, look, man, there's a bunch of different techniques, okay? I've got one of these hobbyist syringes, and you can't stick it in your arm. But I use it for a lot of other different things with, oh gosh, acrylics and adding color and things like that. But if I stick this in the bottle and just suck up a little bit of it, and then insert it into one end of my copper tubing, and just squirt it in there, seal the ends off, let it work its way back and forth, it will clean all of that stuff out. And lo and behold, you'd be surprised. When you turn it over to empty it out, you'd be surprised what comes out the end of that copper. And this, again, you can't see in the copper, so do this a couple times. You can't see in the copper, so don't always assume that your worm is clean. You follow me so far? I knew you would. Now, how do we clean this in order to make sure that we could use that again? Well, if you pour some of this into a jar and you just dip it in. Now, when I dipped that in there, it was dark. Look at that. It comes out as a copper color. So you see that, that'll clean it as well. Fair warning. It's got a nasty odor. It's got that really rotten, really like a rotten boiled egg odor. It's not so prevalent that it's going to run you out of the room. But if you're working around it and you get it, it'll smell a little while. But It's easily rinsable, so you can rinse it right off. Now, here's what I can do with this though. Because the stuff is so, well, I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just telling you it's a good product. It's good enough that I can just pour that back in the bottle and reuse that. That will not be bad. In this particular case, you can see all the grunge and stuff that came off of that copper. I probably would not save that. I probably would not. Okay, so now we've gotten down to the point where we're using Tarnex. So remember, I've got CLR, calcium lime rust remover. This bottle will last you for, look, man, it's great on the shower head. You know, you got that buildup and it makes water shoot all over. Works on the shower head, works on the sink. You know, it works on just about anything, but there's a list on the back that'll tell you what not to use it on. Don't use it on copper. It's not made for copper. Tarnex will be your best friend once you use it. It'll clean up just about anything made out of copper. It'll really pull off all of that debris. Now, last but not least, I've got white vinegar. No, this is not last. This is next to last. I got white vinegar. If you mix white vinegar with water, please don't send me a comment that, well, can I use apple cider vinegar? I don't care what kind of vinegar you use. What you're looking for is an acidic base inside your kettle if you're going to run vinegar water run, just to try to clean out the remainder of whatever you think you may have missed. May be helpful, may not. I choose to use hot soapy water as soon as I'm finished to run. It very, very seldom do I have to run anything else through it if you keep it clean. Just clean it as you use it. Do not allow it to set and cool. Just clean it as you use it. Okay. Now, there's another method. Actually, it is you want to make your own Tarnex. Here's what I have. I've got a half a quart, 50% of a quart. What's that? 500 milliliters. And I've got some hydrogen peroxide. Now, I bought this at Walmart this morning. I ran out. And this is only, there we go. Pop that top off. I've got, I think it's cost me like 82 cents. It'll last you a long time. So I've got hydrogen peroxide, and I've got citric acid, and I've got water. Now, we're going to mix these three together in the following proportions. 500 milliliters of water, 50 milliliters of hydrogen peroxide, and 1 ounce or 20 grams of citric acid. And we're going to make our own Tarnex. And we're going to show you how that works. Okay, hydrogen peroxide goes in. That's a 2 ounce bag, so I'm just going to use half of this bag. Now, these are the kind of measurements that aren't critical. They're important, but they're not critical. So I'm just going to pour in half of this bag. There we go. We're going to give that a stir. Now, in this particular case, I've got another piece here that needs to be cleaned. Now, when you add this in here, you'll notice that it'll start to clean it almost immediately. But it's best if you leave it set. This is not one that works. It doesn't work as fast and as aggressive as Tarnex, but it works just as good. To leave that set in there for about an hour or so, then pull it out and rinse it off. And guess what? You're back to your original piece of copper. The same goes true for inside your worm, in and around your column. If your kettle is made out of copper, a lot of times it's hard to get in there around those edges where a lot of stuff will start to grow and develop. Use Tarnex or mix up some of your own. Pour that in there, allow that to sit for a while, and then just rinse it out. See, that is before and after Tarnax. Gosh, I've covered every bit of that. So we have now unlocked the secrets to how to clean and keep it clean, because after use now, all we have to do is just keep it rinsed over a period of time. If we notice some buildup, or we have an apprehension, or we think that, we'll just use some more Tarnax, or use some more of that, or get in our kettle and use our CLR and clean it. You've got it now, and it's that simple, that easy, and you will have a perfect run, provided you do everything else, every time. Happy distilling.